if we were standing around the LGBTQ water cooler, this is what we think we might all be talking about this week. We refer to it as the hot topic of the week. As we approach the 6th anniversary of the Pulse massacre this weekend, we remember the 49 individuals lost to gun violence. I told you about that on My Mind. We thought that Pulse would be the catalyst for change when it comes to gun regulation. It wasn't. Just this past weekend, the country saw 13 mass shootings just last weekend that left over a dozen people dead and over 70 people wounded. Finally today, the House is hearing testimony from victims and experts as the government at least pretends to be talking and taking some action on the epidemic of violence that we are facing. And it affects the LGBTQ community, as Pulse proved. Our main topic headline for today: Pulse, June 12th, 2016, and its memorial. Guns in America 2022 suggest love may not have won. What do y'all think? Guns in America, how it's affecting us?
I think we're actually coming out this year especially, and in a way that feels fundamentally different. I noted on Queer News Tonight previously that there are even Texas GOP donors to the Republican Party that are calling for sensible gun reform, and this is a real moment that people are trying to meet on both sides.
I'm curious if I can take just 1 second, and I appreciate you allowing me to focus light on you. Pulse happens and you're 14 years old. You were aware of gay when you were 14. You're beginning that exploration. You could have begun it much earlier than that, but you were aware of it at 14.
I was a really strong ally when I was 14.
Okay. So Pulse happens, and what we watched in Love Wins and that campaign and our response from Pulse. Did you think at 14, being very optimistic in the world, not jaded, I'm significantly different in my cynicism of the world than you are, which I love, by the way. I think all of us are expressing the same thing. We see that about you, and we love that. But at 14, past Pulse, did you think, okay, we're going to see change then? Were you optimistic at 14 that would happen?
I think that it's hard to be optimistic about a situation changing that you've known your whole life, that has plagued your understanding of the world in the way that it has mine. And I don't think that it was until it even more intimately impacted me geographically with Parkland. And to see that directly, my neighbor's cousin was one of the victims of Parkland.
Okay, instead of using Pulse at 14, now you're, I think, 17.
I was 16. Actually, no, I was 15. I hadn't even turned 16 yet.
Okay, all right. So you're 15 and you watch Parkland, and you watch David Hogg do an amazing march in Washington against gun violence. The most incredible, by the way, thing that I had ever seen done on guns.
And he's still doing amazing work.
Yes, but he's not as optimistic as he was.
Nope.
But the most amazing thing that I had ever seen against guns done by high school kids.
Yes,
in Washington.
And I walked out with my school. There were I want to say there were actually 2,000 people, and from my high school, it was about 2/3 of the school that walked out. In fact, we had administration. I distinctly remember we had administration. This is my sophomore year.
My question specifically though is, Parkland happens. Were you optimistic? Okay, now the time is right. Something's going to happen.
I wasn't, and the reason why is because I distinctly remember administration were going to try to stop us from walking out. I distinctly remember it, and I think that this was a pivotal moment when young people were engaging in activism in a way that they had quite honestly never done before, in a way that I had never seen the way that March for Our Lives engaged young people.
Let me, in a quick fashion, summarize what I hear you say. You weren't moved to think Pulse is going to do it, gay. You weren't moved to say Parkland's going to do it with high school students. But this time, you think, in Uvalde, something's going to change. What causes your feeling to believe that is true?
It's because the people who were so hesitant to actually do anything donors who have unfortunately some of the most, wield such power in politics, even donors to these candidates are saying we need to do something because this problem has only gotten astronomically worse since both of those tragedies.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy that for Max, for us, we had fire drills when we were little.
Yeah.
He had active shooter drills.
And I've asked my nieces,
and scares,
who are in elementary school, about these active shooter drills. And basically, someone goes down the hallways of the building with a metal pipe, and they bang on the doors as they're walking through the hallways.
Oh my God, how scary.
And like when my 8-year-old niece told me this, it was heartbreaking, because I think about Columbine. When that happened, I was a freshman in high school. And I thought, okay, like how could something like this happen? And we didn't know what was going to happen then. And then fast forward to Pulse, I was with my friends. We were actually at Pulse the week before. And the night that happened, we were at the Manor in Wilton. And I distinctly remember them shutting down the Manor that night and telling everyone to go home because they didn't know what was happening. Because this guy lived, in proximity to here. From South Florida. So, and then fast forward, to Parkland, where my nieces and nephews are at the age, and they went to Parkland and seeing that text message come across my phone, that's seeing an alert that's saying there's a mass shooting at the high school. Like my heart fell out of my chest.
See, your story actually makes me more angry. I focus on Max because where I am, because of Pulse and the effects that I still have from it, I keep wanting to try to find a glimmer of hope that I can hold on to and say, okay, that'll get me through this. I actually get angrier with what you just said, because when they're going through the hallways and an 8-year-old is saying they're taking a pipe and banging on the doors and creating the PTSD that they're creating from that, our society, our schools, our government, our police are so perverted that we transfer responsibility for guns to the children. Prepare for death as opposed to doing something that could prevent the death. And I get angry.
The thing about gun violence is it's not a tornado, right? It's not something where we don't need to be able to control the weather, right? We need to be able to enact legislation. You can't legislate a tornado. You can legislate guns.
Yeah.
And we are the only country where this happens. And what's so unfortunate is that's a universal experience. I experienced that, and imagine that being something that you have to do at least like once a semester. Go through this role play of an active shooter being in your school, where they have someone pretend to be an active shooter, and jiggle the doorbell or not jiggle the door handle and say, oh, if this this isn't real, but when it does happen, when it inevitably does happen at your school,
and forgive me
make sure you know what to do.
To the educators and the politicians and those that financially support this process, to the ignorance and stupidity of this kind of policy. It reminds me of my experience in elementary school in the 1960s to go, oh, they're going to drop a nuclear bomb, and so get under your desk and duck and
That'll
cover.
help.
It's as stupid as that.
And there are people in the GOP who say, well, these mass shootings are just the cost of liberty and freedom. It's appalling. It is beyond appalling.
They have a lot of freedom in Australia. They have a lot of freedom in
and mental health
Austria
and mental health issues as well. Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, I'm curious to the other three of you. I hear Max's optimism that this may be the time. Do you all agree with that?
Yes, I'll say yes, only because there's something that we have now that we didn't have then, which is social media, and we have people like Max who, at a young age are speaking out. I was not doing this at 20 years old. I was working in a movie theater part-time.
But we didn't have the
college.
shootings. We didn't have the shootings at the time.
Right, but we had Columbine. That's all we knew at the time. Sure. But I think the power of social media, and I think the tenacity of, the younger generation coming up, that they're like, this is the world that they've been born into. And enough is enough. Like, they're going to be able to change it. If the other generations can't change it, I have hope that they will.
And I think also those who are of an age, maybe of your age, who are now parents, who have children, because the parents of these children who have been victims are so vocal, thank God.
Yeah.
And how could you not be? I mean, they're so outspoken and so impassioned
The
about
parents
making
were the
change.
heroes in Uvalde.
Exactly.
The mother that went into the school and got her two children. When the
Absolutely.
police stood outside, she
Waiting.
went in to get her two sons and say, "I'm bringing you out," and she did it.
I cannot
And they
imagine
yelled
what that feels
at her
like.
and threatened to arrest her, and she said, "Well, basically, F you."
Yeah.
And
I'm
into the
getting my
school she
kids.
went.
And I want to make it clear, though, that we talk about social media, and I will never shut up about how impactful social media has been in engaging young people in activism in a way, again, that we have never, ever, ever, ever seen before. But the flip side to that is it creates burnout. It creates this media
Exhaustion.
burnout and this exhaustion when we're constantly seeing these issues that are plaguing us. And what's so important when we have movements like this is that we don't take the foot off the gas pedal, because otherwise it's an endurance test at that point.
Exactly.
And at a certain point,
Exactly.
if we do not have the same endurance, nothing's going to get done.
And after Parkland, I thought something was really going to happen. So if you ask me
that's
that
what I'm
same
asking.
question, is that after Parkland, those kids, the gentleman that you mentioned, right, and the girl with the no BS, she was incredible. I thought that they would get
And look at
farther.
there's Sandy Hook. I mean, there's so many examples of moments when we think something's
it.
gotta happen now.
And then what
And
then
here
what
we are
happens is you see it in this new way, the way in which because young people are entering this battle, they also become targets on social media in a way that we haven't seen before in activist work, and that's so sad when you see like 17-year-olds being berated by
The New York
60-year-old
congressman just this week,
Republicans.
the New York Republican congressman that said, we really do have to have realistic gun control laws. You can't be 18 years old to buy an AR, and you have to have background checks. And the end result is the GOP came out against him completely and overwhelmingly, and he said, "Okay, I'm not going to run because I can't win now." Because of the turn on me.
Why does anybody need an AR? Why would you need a gun of that caliber?
I mean,
if for hunting,
They say
BS.
for
That's
prairie
not true.
dogs.
And
I heard prairie dogs.
and we don't need to go super in depth in it, but the individual right to secure a gun wasn't secured until a Supreme Court case in 2008.
Yeah.
I was 6 years old when that right was secured.
You know why that argument doesn't work, in my opinion? Complete, and just like the vaccine works, it is an embracement of science. It is an embracement of fact. And what you just said does not work, because 48 to 52% of Americans didn't even hear what you said. If we are going to be disbelievers and deniers on every single subject, depending on which side you're on, we are never going to come to any agreement, ever. So what you just said, 48% to 52% instantaneously disagreed with what you said.
What I'm so glad about is I believe over 80% of Americans support universal background checks. About 63% of Americans support banning an AR-15.
Yeah, but our problem is the politicians
Right.
are not speaking for the majority.
I want to come back to the real core of the topic. Pulse happens on June 12th, 2016, and our campaign for arguably the balance of the entire year of 2016 is against the LGBTQ community. This crime happened. Turns out that the guy that pulled the trigger is gay. It turns out he pulls the trigger because he is Muslim. It turns out he pulls the trigger because he wants to get approval of his anti-LGBTQ father and his anti-LGBTQ religion. Those are all facts. So we spent the better part of 2016 saying love wins. We're 6 years later.
Is it winning?
Show me where
Is it winning?
the win
It's
took
not.
place.
It's not. It's gotten worse.
I think especially over the past year.
Okay, well,
I want
Look
to.
at Max. Let Max be our hope.
yeah.
Okay.
I want to
say-
say it again, and I want to say it again because I said you can't take the foot off the gas pedal with these things, because then you're going to come to a stop eventually before getting to your destination. And what's so important, again, June 11th, it's this Saturday. It is national rally. Wherever you are, there's likely a rally or a march somewhere within a reasonable distance of you. Please go on the March for Our Lives website and find one near you.
Very good advice, and let's do that. And one last thing, on behalf of all of us at It's Happening Out, we remember June 12th. We remember Pulse. We remember what it means. It still means a dramatic amount of things to us. We have somewhat in our community forgotten about Pulse. We know Pulse, but we can't say any of the names.
Yeah.
We can't say where's the memorial because it doesn't exist. I went to Pulse at Gay Days, And it looks the exact same way it did in January of 2017. No progress at all. Please forgive me, Barbara Poma, but there's no progress. And we deserve better. And the 49 that were killed and the 50 that were injured deserve better from our community and from the broad community, and I don't see the progress. Even if we don't have a memorial, even if we don't do something at the site on Orange Avenue, even if we do nothing, we have an obligation to do something about what caused it. 18-year-olds shouldn't be carrying AR-15s, period. End of conversation. But I'm very concerned that 6 years from now, we'll be having the exact same conversation that we're having today. But we still remember and honor those affected by Pulse. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.